Welcome back to the chair build, episode 6. In this episode, we're going to finish up construction of the frame of the chair by attaching the curved arm pieces and the rear stretcher. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, we've got the front stretcher attached, and now we're at the part of the chair build that was by far the most challenging for me to figure out. And that is attaching these big curved leg slash arm pieces. And the first challenge, let me move this out of the way and twist this around so you can see. The first challenge is that to properly locate and attach these curved arm pieces, I need this structure to sit or stand in such a way that if you can see the back, I need the rear legs to be sitting flat, just like they would be, when the chair is completed. But challenge is, as you can see, if I let go of this, it's just going to fall down. So I had to figure out a way for this to stand in the proper location, but still enable me to do the work that I need to do. All right, here's what I came up with. Pretty straightforward. It is essentially a single front leg that's temporarily clamped to the front stretcher, and it holds this in the right location. The rear legs are flat, and yet I still got room to work and maneuver in here. So with that challenge solved, the next challenge, or the next thing to deal with, is determining exactly where to locate and attach these arm pieces. And as I've indicated before, when making furniture, you want to do so in a way that each piece is consistent within itself, but also you're doing it in such a way that you can replicate it from one piece of furniture to the next. And what I did was, if you recall, we made this rear leg piece using a big template. And what I did was, through a lot of trial and error, figured out exactly where I wanted this arm piece front to back, and then also where I wanted it in terms of this direction or orientation. And once I figured that out, I made a duplicate of the template for this piece, and I cut off part of the front. And so what I can do now is I take this little template piece, line it up top and bottom and with the front, and I just draw a pencil line on the back side. All right, I've spun this around so you can see this pencil line here. And what this pencil line does for me is it lets me know where this piece goes, both in terms of front to back, but also in terms of this direction or orientation. And so ultimately we'll get these pieces attached so that they line up right with that pencil line. Which leads to the question, well, how do you attach this curved arm piece to this rear leg piece? And what we're going to do, well, if I were to just lay this up flat against here and put in a couple screws, that wouldn't be a very strong joint. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut a notch out of this curved leg piece so that we can then essentially slide this over this piece, and the two pieces will interlock and make a much stronger joint. All right, here's a close-up view of the front of the chair. Got the curved arm leg piece, the rear leg piece here, the front stretcher. And if you look down here, you can see where there's been a notch cut out of this piece, and it fits over and interlocks with this piece. And that creates a stronger joint. And so what we've got to do now is determine precisely where that notch belongs and get it cut out. All right, the way that we determine where the notch gets cut out is we take the two curved arm pieces, put them, locate them where they're going to be attached, clamp them in place, and then simply take a pencil and mark on the inside of the arm at the top of this piece and the bottom of this piece. Do the same thing on the other side. And then when we take these curved arm pieces off and lay them down, you'll see the two pencil lines, and that shows us exactly where the notch needs to be cut out. You can see the two pencil lines. This tells us where we need to cut our notch out. One of the things that you want to make sure you do when cutting out a notch like this is you want to make sure that you're cutting it at a consistent depth across the entire width of that notch. And one way to do that is to use a little palm router like this. It's in an adjustable base, so I can adjust the depth of the bit and run the router over the workpiece, and it will ensure that I get a consistent depth of cut across the width of this. One concern though is that because this piece is so narrow that the base of this router has a tendency to tip, and if it were to tip while you're cutting, you're more than likely going to ruin your workpiece. So we've got to make a little jig to prevent that from happening. And the way that we do that is take a scrap piece of cherry, trace along the outside and the inside of our leg. And if we cut these two pieces out, we'll be able to clamp them onto the leg, and it'll kind of be like a scaffolding of sorts that extends the work surface out enough so that when we're running the router over this, it doesn't tip. Let me cut this out and show you what I'm talking about. All right, we've got that little scaffolding piece clamped on here so that when I run the router across here, I don't run the risk of it tipping and damaging the workpiece. I've got the arm clamped down so it doesn't slide around. Got the depth on the router set to 3/8 of an inch. So let's start routing this cutout. All right, messy but effective. It looks good. Although you can see here and here we didn't cut right up to the line. You don't want to take the chance that you cut too far and go over the line. That'd look pretty sloppy. So we'll just clean this up with a chisel. All right, process is a little messy, but as you can see, we have a very nicely cut notch, nice and even, consistent depth. So what I'll do is cut the notch on the other leg, and then we'll be ready to attach the legs to the chair. All right, with the notches cut out, we can place these curved leg pieces in location so we can get them secured. They're lined up on the pencil lines that we drew earlier. Everything looks good and level. One way to check and make sure that these legs are in the proper location is simply to take the template that we used before to draw those pencil lines and simply hold it up and make sure that they're both even across the front, and they both are. So these legs are in the correct location. The next thing to do is to remove this temporary leg that we used earlier, and
And if everything's in the right place, the chair should sit flat and level, at which point we can get a couple screws in to secure these. And this chair is perfectly flat and level. So what I can do now is there are 2 screws that go in each side. I can get those in now, take the clamps off, and we'll be ready to move on to the next part of this. All right, we've got these curved pieces secured at the front. The chair is solid and flat. So what I need to do now is get the rear stretcher attached and finish the frame of the chair. But before doing that, I need to put a spacer down in here. Because there's nothing securing these 2 sides at the rear end of the chair. We've got the stretcher in the front, but there's nothing in the back end of the chair yet. And because of that, these pieces can move in or move out, can flex a little bit. And we need to make sure that the footprint or the base of the chair is square before we attach the rear stretcher. Otherwise, we can end up with a chair that looks like some weird parallelogram or something. So I've got a spacer. Just place that inside those rear legs, clamp it down, and this spacer is the same length or width as the front stretcher. So by clamping that in place, I know that the distance between the inside of the legs here is the same as the distance at the front. And so the base or the footprint of the chair is square. And so now we're ready to figure out where exactly this goes. In terms of locating it up and down, it's pretty obvious where it's going to go. It's going to go right on the underside of these curved arm pieces. And in terms of locating it left to right, I've already done the math and marked out where this will line up on the center of these rear support pieces. And if I just hold that up there, it looks good. So I just need to get some holes drilled in the rear so the screws can go in. And because this piece is curved, I don't want to try to drill it by hand, because if I don't get this hole straight, the screw goes in crooked and comes out the side of the support piece or something. So I'm just going to run over to the drill press and get these 2 holes drilled, and then we'll be able to get this attached. All right, you can see I've got the holes cut on the back side of this rear stretcher, but before we can attach this, if we take a look at the already completed chair, you can see there are notches that are cut out so that when this attaches, it actually slides onto these rear support pieces. I think it looks a little nicer, but more importantly, it makes this a stronger joint. So I'll go over to I've already got these marked out, as you can see. I'll go over to the bandsaw, cut out the majority of the material there, and then clean it up with some chisels, and then we can get this rear stretcher attached, and then the frame of this chair will be completed. All right, we've got the notches cut and cleaned up in this rear stretcher, and it's now been maneuvered into location and clamped to hold it in place. Just to make sure that this is in the proper location or orientation, if I take a level and put it on the back side of these arm pieces, you can see that that is perfectly level. So all I need to do now is get screws in through the back side of the stretcher, and then I'm going to put 2 screws coming up underneath the stretcher into the arm, two screws on each side to hold all that together. So let's go ahead and take care of that. All right, the frame of this chair is now completed, and I could not be happier. The chair sits perfectly flat, it's solid, it's sturdy, and so the next thing to do is to start making the curved pieces that form the seat and the back of the chair, and that's what we'll do the next time we get together. So until then, if you got any questions or comments, let me know. Otherwise, thanks for watching, and if you like what you're seeing, hit that subscribe button. We'll see you next time.